Hello and welcome to the Almost Naked Conversation. But wait, that's not the right banner because this is not the first time Roxana and I are trying to have this conversation. Believe you me, and I think some of you will because you were here and you were asking, where the heck are you? So this is our third attempt at getting this right and beating Miss Technology and telling her, no, this is going to work our way. So I'm not judging you, technology. I'm just saying stop judging me and just work for me. And talking about judgment, I'm Szebastian Onne, the Almost Naked CEO. I'm here because I care and because I give a damn. And I judge people, things, life a lot. And then I hold my breath and tell myself, stop judging. What if you were in that place? And through mistakes, through all the dramas, through hard lessons, I have learned judging gets us nowhere. But where did I learn all this judging from? Well, the thing is, everywhere in society, every minute, everyone is judging somebody or something just on their first appearance. Don't we do that? You look at somebody, you already decide, oh, that guy must be arrogant. You look at somebody who has, I don't know, we look at people who have emo and goth kind of appearance because that's what they like, and we make assumptions about them. You look at somebody like me who colors or bleaches their hair and go, oh, identity crisis. All those judgments, non-stop judgments, and that's how the society runs. But there's a specific judgment we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about millennials. How many of you look at a millennial and already decide they're lazy, they're entitled, they're not intelligent, they're not hardworking, and so many more things? But then again, if you're a millennial right now watching, how many of you, when you're in an argument, tell somebody older than you, okay, boomer, or something like that? You have done that. Please don't deny it. We all have done that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And before I do that, let me very, very quickly just introduce you to a little promo video we created with Roxana so you know who she is and what she does. Here we go.
Because I actually wanted to become a teacher at some point when I was a teenager. But then I was thinking, because I was still in Romania back then, we moved to Canada in 2017 together with my family. So I was still there and I was thinking, look, if I become a teacher, I'm going to starve because, teachers are not very well paid. We all know that. So I wanted to become a lawyer after that. And then my mom said, oh, you can't become a lawyer because you're going to talk to criminals all day. And I don't want this for you. So it's funny. It's funny then because I ended up working in an international law firm and actually being sort of the in-house teacher because I was a trainer. Working with millennial leaders across the globe and helping them become dream bosses, build dream teams, and really lead different. I've been doing this in my business for the past 4 years now. Absolutely. And I believe that, you have all of these assessment tools that tell you you're one thing or another, and we use them as labels and as excuses a lot, rather than using them as helping us understand more about how we work and what makes us powerful and what makes us motivated and engaged. This is what they're there for. And we've been using them wrong. And this is what I find with a lot of people. We hide behind these sorts of labels. So if I could change the world, I would build personal development skills gyms, just like your normal gym. Like people would go there to train their personal skills. That's what I would do. I am Roxana Radulescu, and you are watching Dreamaniac TV.
You know what to do. Yes, that's right. You're watching Dreamaniac TV and you're watching the Almost Naked Conversation with awesome, fantastic, fabulous, all personal Roxana Radulescu. And I say the name right now. There you go.
You do.
But
You sure do.
I'm going to start with a fight here. What is a normal gym? There is no normal gym. We're all psychos in the gym.
Well, first of all, Sebastian, thank you for having me again. And let's just celebrate that this time round.
Thank you for having your 3.0.
We're actually able to go live and have this conversation. And what I will say, oh man, it's so weird to watch yourself talking and watch a video of yourself. But you know what, the way I was thinking about the skills gym is because I think about this about skills as in skills muscles. It's like we all have them, and some of them are strong, some of them are weaker. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a skills gym where we could train the weaker skills muscles so that they can support the stronger skills muscles and also maintain those strong skills muscles? Because sometimes we just take the strong ones for granted, and we think, just because I'm good at this, that must mean everybody is, and it must come so easy to everybody. And the reality is, no, it's different.
No, that's the thing. The assumption, we are again talking about judging an assumption.
Yeah.
We assume that because to me is easy, or it looks easy, everybody else should know that, or things like that. I think the whole judgment comes from an angle of our own personal experiences, and we kind of, from what we know, what we have learned, what we have seen around our environment, we expect everybody else to think the same way, be the same way, and behave the same way. And when they don't, when they surprise us by being different, we start judging. We start, whatever you want to call it, but we start putting, as you call it, putting labels. So let's, first of all, talk about labels. I want you to kind of explain to people the different generations we have right now, which are like hot potato of debates. The millennials, the Gen X, the Gen Z, and whichever is the youngest, please define me under that.
Okay. So in that case, let's show what the generations are all about. And for people watching, it would be very nice if we knew which generation you identify yourself as. Looking at, that's why we put the years of each generation, where they stand, where they sit, so that we're more clear. Because sometimes even just the whole conversation around generations can get pretty messy and chaotic, as I noticed, because people are not really sure what we're talking about when we're talking about when we're saying something like, okay, boomer, or you're such a snowflake.
Oh my God, I listen to those terms.
Are labeled, right?
Okay, boomer, snowflake. I listen to those terms and I really just go, would you please? My bigger problem is the first time I heard them, I'm like, okay, I think you're trying to insult me. At least tell me what that stands for.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's why, if we clarified more and assumed less, I think we would have so much more effective conversations, at least, if not richer conversations. So that's why, working with lawyers for more than 16 years taught me that we need to define things before we start talking about them. So I usually start with the definitions in anything. It can be a workshop or a coaching session, whatever, or a live show. So when we look at the generations, this is what we're talking about: baby boomers, 46 to 64, Gen Xers, 65 to 80s, millennials, or Generation Y. By the way, they're the same thing when we talk about millennials or Gen Y. 81 to 96. And then Gen Zs, where you, Sebastian, said you want to be, those are people born between 97 and 2012. So that's where you are. Just so you
All
know.
right. Although I have to say, looking at the chart, it hurts me because my ear is way, way, way up in the wrong box. It's like, no,
Oh,
I'm not that old.
it's and my favorite quote about age is mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. So I find that it's very useful. And
This is
I'm
me taking my mind out and putting it away. Okay.
so but really, so because we wanted to and by the way, there's a generation that's in between, which we call exennials, which are people born on the cusp of Gen X and millennials. And if you think about some of the traits that you see here and that we're going to talk about more of, you might recognize some of the traits from Gen X and some of the traits from the millennial generations. So that's and it's because I'm there on the cusp
Sorry.
that I thought, it's not that black and white. It's not that clear cut. And there's a lot of things that we have to learn from one another, and that we actually learn from one another, and a lot of influencing that we do, whether we like it or not, or know it or not. So I really tapped into this intergenerational power and intergenerational leadership, because there's a bunch of stuff that each generation contributes with, and a lot of things that we can share and learn from one another. This is that's why I'm so passionate about this particular topic.
Oh, absolutely. Look, first of all, thank you for actually creating that cusp because I feel better being in a cusp. It just feels so nice. Okay, I'm still not old enough. So I appreciate you doing that. Uh, I'm going to say you did that for yourself, but it works for me. So great. Thank you. um,
You're welcome.
but, you know, first question is why did we create all these labels? Why do you feel the need for creating all these labels of generations, and how is that idea helpful, if at all?
Well, I think with it's just human. And as you said before, maybe it's not even label, maybe it's the biases that we have, which we all have. Some of them are conscious, but a lot of them are unconscious. There are about 90 something unconscious biases when we talk about bias, by the way.
Wow.
So yeah,
Okay.
90.
We need to do another episode on that.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so there's and actually that's measurable. And there's a website, I think it's Penn State. If you go to their website, they do have a research and an assessment on all kinds of biases, just to check,
Right.
am I biased? How much am I biased, if I am? Because, and all of that comes, and it's exactly what you were talking about before, it comes from our experiences growing up, from our beliefs, our values. We all come from the way I look at it, all of a family has its own culture, right? So you look at um, each family, and we operate in a certain way, and that's the culture that we learn in that family, how we do things around here. And then we
Right.
extend that term to organizations or even countries. When you think about culture, you think about, this is how we do things around here that helps us be successful. So there are certain ways which I'm used to doing things in, when it comes to my background, my family. And as I was saying, I moved from Europe, Romania to Canada back in 2017. So there was a lot of cultural adaptation that had to happen there, right? But we do grow up with a bunch of stuff that we're used to, and that becomes our normal. And
Right.
then we want, we're, as people, we want to fit in, we want to belong, we don't want to be kicked out of a group. So where we see that the differences are too big or too many for us to feel that we belong to that group, perhaps we start to create another one where we feel more comfortable, and we will feel that, where we feel that we belong more of. And this is what we do, and it's a huge part of being human. When it doesn't work anymore is when we start excluding having even a conversation with somebody from a different group just because they come from a different group, and we stop looking at what makes us alike just because all we see is the difference.
Well, that's what brings me to the question. We're talking about stop judging the millennials, and that happens a lot. Especially we are now hyper connected on social media. Uh, Everybody is connected. Every generation is connected with all of that. There's so many apps, and everything is happening. And of course, there's political discourse happening. There's economic discourse happening. There's lifestyle discourse happening. Too much is going on. I'll put it this way: we're just constantly having all these conversations that may not even be necessarily needed every day in our lives. And a part of that, at least I personally find, there's a toxicity comes where if somebody doesn't agree, they instantly throw the label of generation. Okay, boomer, oh, you millennials, what would you know? As I was saying in the beginning, first thing, if you don't mind really sharing with the world things that millennials are doing that are really useful, that have not been done before, or that that are changing the world in a better way. So anybody who has any kind of negative perceptions about millennials, they can see a little bit how millennials are actually contributing to the world right now.
Oh, but they've started a long time ago, before the pandemic. I think when I look at millennials, and I do work with a lot of millennial leaders, and I love working with them because I love learning from them. So what I've noticed, and even back in my corporate days, I noticed that they were the ones that brought the conversation of what we now call work-life balance, which I think is more of a work-home balance, because life includes both work and home. So they're the ones that pushed for this conversation to happen in the boardroom. And it is, as we see, especially today, it's such an important conversation to have. And it really helped that it was there before the pandemic happened, because a lot of the organizations who took that conversation seriously had a lot to gain from that. And they were able to manage the crisis better. Even if not thriving, but it helped them keep a little bit of more balance during the crisis. So, and that is huge. And another thing that is sort of associated with that, and which really comes from the fact that, hey, we spend a lot of time at work, whatever work we're doing every day. And work started to be so meaningful and so purposeful and so much part of who we are as individuals. That's why I say it's all personal. Nothing is just business, because
Right.
we bring a lot of ourselves to work, again, whether we like it or not, whether we want it or not. It's just like everything that is on the inside goes with us pretty much everywhere, right? So a lot of that happened, and work started to be more than just a 9 to 5, more than just going somewhere. As we see, right? We can work from
Especially
everywhere
since we
right
are so
now.
connected, because you're taking
Exactly.
work on devices.
Exactly. And a lot of that meant that we somehow might also have a good time at work. We might as well enjoy doing the work and talking to those people and working with those teams and doing the things that we do on a daily basis for so many hours. So, what also changed was the way that we look at giving feedback to people. And it's the millennial generation that brought the positive reinforcement more into the workplace. Because even I, as a Gen Xer, I grew up with feedback as criticism. And it was more about, okay, I'm not going to tell you what you're good at and what works because you already know that. What I'm going to tell you is what you can improve, what you don't have, what you still need to work on. And the millennials came and said, well, we actually might want to look at the things that people are good at, acknowledge them, reinforce them so that they thrive. Because when you let people know how good they are at what they're doing and what that is specifically, they will want to do more of that and even better. We want to grow. We're not static, right? We want to grow and continuously develop. So that's what changed the workplace conversations a lot. And again, it happened way before the pandemic, and we all benefited from that.
Absolutely. I think the work-life balance and, as you're saying, work-home balance, all of that, I would say I started noticing around a decade ago, and pretty much when when millennial generation started going into work, entering the workforce, and they started pointing out things that were, I think, the older generations, because they have had experiences they've come to accept certain things as, this is what hardworking means. This is what this is what loyal employee or loyal team member means, which was set more on a scene of, we came out of generations before us, came out of wars, another huge pandemic before that, and lots of revolution and all that. So they grew up thinking sacrificing yourself for the greater good is, good society, good community. So somewhere down the line, the sense of self was lost, and I think millennials brought that back. They brought that back, that you also matter,
Yeah.
individuals also matter. Go on.
No, what I wanted to say is that, and it's interesting because I see this happening all the time when we think about generations. I see people from different generations saying exactly what you mentioned, like, "Oh, my generation went through this, this, and that, and nobody gave us a tap on the shoulder," or "We all had to deal with a lot of bad stuff." Well, guess what? It's not that you can't say that the younger generations don't know what a crisis is, and I think they found that out very, very, being very, very young. I mean, when you look at the millennials, the financial crash in 2008 happened for most of them when they were graduating college, and they were perhaps hoping they would be paying for the all of the debt accumulated to be able to graduate that college or university, and they were hoping for a good job to be able to pay for that debt, which, guess what, when the markets fall, that's going to be very difficult to do. So it was like right at the beginning of their careers, most of them, the majority of them, were there. And okay, what do you do? So they had to develop that kind of flexibility, and they had to work on their own work home balance so that they can move forward, so that they can think about, okay, what is the next step that I can take right now when I have very little under my control, right? For the Gen Zs, which are the youngest generation, we have yet to find out what the pandemic did to them. I mean, just
Right.
imagine you're a teenager, you're in high school, and high school goes for 4 years. 2 years
Yep.
out of that, you're inside. You can't see your colleagues. You can see your friends. You can only see them virtually. It's 2 years of your high school life that are taken away from you, and then you have to adapt and see, okay, what is it that I can do? How can I move on? So I think it's a lot of building on what the other generations went through. And I'm not saying like, okay, we all went through something.
Yeah.
uh let's acknowledge that instead of just throwing that in each other's face. What is that helpful with?
That's it. How is it helping? If I call somebody something, how is that helping solve the problem? Okay, if we disagree on something, maybe we should have a dialogue on that. Maybe we should find a common ground. And okay, well, okay, this is how we did it. This is how you do it. Can we do something common that works for me and works for you as well? And I think that's where this judgment will stop, because
Yeah.
then we're focusing on solving a problem together as a team, rather than it's kind of a competition who's going to insult the which generation more. And I think that needs to stop, because here's a very important thing. What happens if we remove all these labels? If we don't have a way to identify each other's by labels, can we still do that? We are human beings. I think we're still going to have prejudice. We're still going to have the bias, as you're talking about. But I think if we remove these generational labels and other labels, maybe we can focus on what do we have in common. What do you think?
I love that. And this is why I wanted to even stop and have this conversation right here. So I going back to, here's one thing that can come as an example here. So a simple example of feedback. Gen X, so people who are in their later 40s right now, took feedback as criticism, and they gave feedback as criticism. That was it for them. For the millennials, so 30 something to 40ish, for them feedback was more around positive reinforcement. How can I encourage you? What are the positive things that we're looking at, and how can we build on those? How can we grow them even more? Now, when we look at Gen Zs, so people who are teens or in their 20s, early 20s right now, here's what happened, and it's very interesting. They are very much fans of dialogue. So they are going to tell you the good when it's good, the bad when it's bad. So they very much combined these two powers of Gen Xers and millennials in one go. And this is why
Right.
we see with Gen Zs. And then if you've interviewed, I know I've interviewed a few for some internship positions at All Personal a while back. And all of them, I'm not kidding, all of them asked me, what is your mission for All Personal? What are you, how are you, what do you want to inspire in the people that you work with? What changes do you want to create in the world with All Personal? And
And I think
I'm
that's what people haven't been used to. People are
no,
not used to being interviewed back,
are
and
you
it's like,
kidding?
are you seriously asking me a question?
And I love that. But I was thinking, I would never have even thought to ask that back in my 20s. Never. Like, I wouldn't, that wasn't a question for a potential
Because
employee.
we were raised with, you
Yes.
are so lucky to get a job. You are
Yes.
so lucky to be part of that company,
Yeah.
and be grateful that you're employed. So I think the intention was good, the
Yeah.
gratitude and, learning and all that. But somewhere I think the previous generation instilled what they had experienced, which is subservience, to obey, to be obedient, to not question authority, because they went through all of that. They
Yeah.
went through all of that, and they had to, you know, and we're talking about, pre-war and war times. had to go through such hard stress that when they finally started having a good job and a good life, they didn't
Mhm.
question that. They were,
Yeah.
I think they came from that angle like, hey, be grateful that you actually have a good life. Some of us never had that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because for some of them, they didn't have that chance, right? I mean, not everybody was able to go to school, to graduate back in the 40s, 50s, right? So that was one thing. And then as things evolved, the learning became, so going to school became necessary so that you can have access to a good job that helps you pay for the mortgage, for the bills, and everything. Now, with the millennials, that changed because here's the thing, there's the connection between the way in which we're used to learn at school that creates working habits. So if in my childhood years, the teacher was all knowing, they had access to all of the information, of course I would not question that. Of course they would be the authority. And then what that does, translation into the workplace, is the boss, the leader, will be the authority because they are there for a reason. They are there because they have all of the information and the knowledge and experience, which I don't have yet. Well, with time, as technology also progressed, these things became more accessible. So with Gen X, we had I remember there was learning on TV that was available before the internet era, right?
Right,
So even
right.
before that, there
Which
would
was
be these TV
revolutionary.
classes.
Like you
Yeah,
can use TV to learn.
exactly. So if you wanted to, you had an extra access to a learning class, to something extra that you could do. With millennials, well, they grew up with the internet, right? They could Google stuff, which we couldn't do growing up. So of course, in that case, the teacher wasn't the authority anymore. They were more of the kind of a coach, right? A facilitator of learning. Because yes, you could actually look up stuff on the internet and tell your teacher, well, actually, no, this is not like that. And you could have a debate,
I
right?
was one of those students. I was
So,
one of those students. And
see,
I
so
can
you
tell
know.
you, it shocked my teachers. It shocked my teachers when my hand would be raised
Yeah.
because I'm saying, no, 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 that's not
Mhm.
correct. That's not. I'll give you an example. So, one of my teachers, English teachers, would always use the word island. And I would get very confused because everywhere I've read and heard, and, in my family, it's island. So, for a while, that learning was with me where I would not question it. When it started bothering me to the point where I'm like, I'm sorry, yes, that's not island, that's island. She's like, are you the teacher or am I the teacher? Do you know better than me? I'm like, yes, you're the teacher, but that's not how you
Mhm.
say it. And yeah, you're right. The first reaction and everything, I'll put it this way, it went up to the point that my parent got called in for me being disobedient. And ultimately, we won because my father questioned the principal, saying, well, tell me if my child is wrong. And I wasn't. So ultimately, they had to agree. And this is not about ego. The thing is, as a child, I didn't know better. All I knew
Mhm.
was that, hang on, which one of you are correct? Everybody else I'm listening to, or this one person who's saying this, who I'm supposed to take as everything and not question. So,
Yes. Yeah.
I can so relate to that.
But and I think so many of us can. And I think that was the real revolution if you think about it. When people started to have access to information, to be able to question authority more. And as we go into even the younger generation, like the Gen Zs, for them, like learning is everywhere. They're the YouTube generation, right? I mean, they learn everything from everywhere. And then what that does to their mindset when they think about work is available everywhere, and that's where we also have that option right now to be able to work from everywhere. And I think that changes the paradigm so much, but not in terms of that's why I keep saying it's not about one generation or another, because in one way or another all of the generations benefit from all of these changes. And yes, there is room for improvement, but I think the older generations started to understand why that level of debate is healthy, why having a conflict of ideas is healthy in a team or in an organization, and how they can encourage that instead of just killing it in the bud because I'm the boss and I know better. And they realize it, and that's why the whole leadership paradigm changed, because it's not about a leader who's isolated at the top and they're on the top of a mountain and they know everything about everything anymore, because it's not the case. And everything changes so fast that it's impossible for anyone to think that they can handle everything on their own. And that's why I say, like, everything that each generation brought into the workplace, and there will still be changes in the workplace, but I think just understanding what are some of the intergenerational traits that we can start building on more of, that is going to end up making us happier at work. And what I mean by happier is just having that sense of fulfillment, because at the end of the day, we want to feel that what we're doing at work matters to somebody somewhere in
Absolutely.
this world.
Absolutely. I think it is also, I'll give my example. When I started my own business and everything, and I moved everything, started working from home, and I'm talking about 13 years ago, and I was still in a full-time job as well, but I started working from home. Everybody made fun of that, and even years later, I would say as recent as before pandemic, people even went ahead to go and say, well, oh, this person must be unemployed. They hardly ever leave the house and all that. Unfortunately, it's the pandemic, but I think it kind of woke people up that no, work from home is possible. And it's funny, the people who made fun of me or my team or companies like us, they are now reaching out to the companies like us and the teams like us and the talents like us to say, hey, how do you do this? How do you remotely work? How do you remotely set up? Can you teach me this? Can you? I think the realization is happening for all the generations again, not just one generation, but really all the generations. And I think a lot of that goes back to what I was asking earlier. And, we talked about labels, that we try to box, categorize, label everything. I think labeling for identification purpose is not a negative thing, but labeling to discriminate or make somebody feel not good enough or make somebody feel like they're a mistake. I think that's where the problem starts, because yes, labels help us identify some characteristics, but when it comes to those labels becoming a reason for you to stop somebody from growing or stop somebody from being part of your team, I think that's where the problem really becomes, the judgment really comes in. I want to put in a comment because it just made me laugh. Um, High Tech Mother says, you two are making me feel ancient. Just kidding. Uh, I think High Tech Mother,
Oh,
we
we
both kind of
managed
feel
to do
ancient
this.
every day, So I'm glad you're feeling ancient. No, I'm kidding. Because I
That's
know.
good.
I don't want
That,
you.
I think that comes with so much wisdom and experience.
Well,
I love
that's
that.
what I say. I'm not ancient. I'm smart. you know. So, talking about how labels affect and all, we talked about how if you can take the labels away and all that. We don't need a pandemic to teach us to work with each other. We don't need an obstacle to teach us with each other. But in some way, I think obstacles actually do provide an opportunity as well to overcome the difference, to overcome these prejudices, because we need each other.
Mhm.
We don't have a choice. We are put in a situation like we're, locked in a room together, and now we have to survive, and we all have to use everybody's skills to get out of the situation. What do you think about that?
Mhm. Uh, and it's interesting how you said we don't need a pandemic to do all the things that we actually ended up doing. And at the same time, I think we maybe did, because what this crisis meant was it created the urgency of us changing the way we were working faster,
Right.
because we just needed to adapt, right, immediately. There was no time to think, there was no time to plan. That's what crisis does. Crisis produces change immediately, and then you have some time to react and adapt and go with what the change already brought. So perhaps we were moving a little bit too slow and we just needed a push to be able to make that change faster. And what that means is, and this is what a lot of leaders and organizations are going through right now, as they're going through another kind of change and another kind of
Yep.
crisis. And it's been like it's already been crisis mode for at least 2 years now.
Definitely.
And so people are still trying to figure out stuff. They're still looking at solutions, what works, what doesn't work. And the reality is we won't know until we try it and see if it works. But that's the whole point of changing the way in which we work, is allowing for that fail to safe approach rather than fail safe, so it's like safe to fail, sorry, not safe. They're like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
No, 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 I
So
get it. Can you actually
that
explain that a little bit? Because a lot of people will not
yeah.
understand what we just said, safe to fail
so
and fail safe.
So, safe to fail is when I'm allowing for experimentation, for people to try things out, see what works, and change what doesn't, without the threat somewhere that, okay, if this doesn't work, then you're fired. That's part of, and that's what I talk about when we talk about learning. For example, when people talk about learning, and especially when I talk to teams about learning, they think about formal courses and certifications and stuff like that. And it's learning is actually experimenting, and it has a lot to do with change, with changing how we do things, because we have to. We don't necessarily know what we need to put instead of that. So we're trying things out. We're looking at, okay, how can we do things differently? When are we going to start doing that differently? And then look at the results. And then we see, does that work? Does it not work? Where does it work and where it doesn't? And what is it that we can change to make it work better? So that is the safe to fail approach. The fail safe was the older way that in which we were used to work, where, okay, you need to do this and you need to get it right. If you don't get it right, you're
You're
done.
not allowed to fail. You're not allowed to make
You're
mistakes.
not allowed. No, or not that you're done, but it's going to be bad. Like, you're going to be punished one way or another. It's going to be, I don't know, I'm going to
Yeah.
take money from your salary. You're going to end up spending more time working without being paid extra. One way or another. It's like school, right? You do something bad,
Right.
or you don't know something, where you come up with something different and you get a bad grade. You get punished for that. It's that. So, and learning doesn't have to do with punishment. Learning is all about experimentation. And that is what we're seeing now, with experimentation at high levels in the organization, top, bottom down, networked
Yeah.
experimentation, like everybody chips in. And I think
And
perhaps
there
we
is a
need a
lot of
push.
change happening for sure. Um, now we talk about recession coming again. We're talking
Yeah.
about, we're already seeing tens and thousands of job cuts.
Yeah.
We are seeing people laid off every day. All this is coming. We have seen the concept. We're talking about great resignation. We're talking about quiet quitting and quiet firing and all that. Um, which is where I have to ask, labels do also have some value in understanding all these concepts, right? We're talking about quiet firing, quiet quitting. Um, uh, I'm
Yeah.
forgetting what else I was saying, but these labels also kind of guide us as well what to do next with our lives, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I think it helps increase impact. I mean, when we look at quiet quitting, um, it wasn't, that's not something new. That was there before. It was called demotivation, lack of sense of purpose, lack of fulfillment, and all that. But it's sort of what I see right now is a lot of rebranding when it comes to all of the
Yeah,
greats, and all of the quiets out there.
right.
And there will probably be more, and that is good because it brings them back in the forefront. And what that means is, if we're talking about them and they're so great and they're so quiet, they must be important, because they must be bothering us at some
I think
level.
it's a lot like fashion, that it comes back in different forms again and
Yeah.
again, and
Yeah.
we kind of reapply the same styles but in a
Mhm.
different touch with a generation. So I think it's, again, as you're saying, it's about generation. So every generation is kind of labeling them according to what makes sense in their culture, in their set of things. And yeah, because I was going to make a judgmental statement right then. I just stopped myself. So I'll reframe. I think what is also happening is, as the generations are changing, um, they are simplifying things for themselves to make sense. And I think that sometimes pisses off the other generations because they are used to seeing things a certain way,
Mhm.
and they kind of think like it's being it's not being taken seriously what the situation is. So how can all of us, different generations, and especially millennials, number one, really, for me, the focus is how can we learn from millennials as older generations, and how can we work together to create a non judgmental environment.
So I would go back to learning. Just ask yourself this: what have I learned from this person in front of me today? What is one thing that made me think about the way that I think about things? What is something that made me ask myself, wait, what? What does that mean? And actually ask that. So, what I find that, and there's one example that I love using for in one of the courses that I teach. Um, and just think about milk. Everybody listening, watching, whatever, think about milk. And think about this way: you think to yourself, I need to go grocery shopping, I need to go buy some milk for myself. Okay, done, right? What kind of milk do you think about?
I was wondering where you're going. You're making me hungry, but I was also wondering where is this going. Yeah, because we have single dollop, double dollop, we have light and ultra light, and almond milk and soy milk, and oh my god, there's a whole section. There's a whole section of.
It's the whole section. But the thing is, we talk about one word, which will mean so many different things to every one of us potentially, right?
Right.
Maybe most of us will think about cow milk, but even those will think about, less fat or normal fat or whatever. So think about that. Think about the way in which we interpret all of these messages that come towards us based on our sense of normal, based on that's what I was used to having growing up, and that's my
Right.
normal. But my normal is not going to be exactly the same with your normal. So when we look at generations, it's the same thing. They grew up in different environments, and of course those environments influenced the way that they think, the way that they behave, the way that they do everything, right? And it's just stop and trying to figure out, okay, what do they mean by that? Or do I understand that correctly? Just stop and making sure that not just that I hear what you're saying, but that I understand what you mean, because that is the actual effective communication. What you're saying to me might mean a different thing. So if I don't let you know what I understand from what you're saying, so that we make sure we have a common ground in this conversation, then it's not going to work. And that's regardless of generations. It does not, it's generations, it's communication styles, it's working styles, it's leadership styles, it's personality styles. You name them, we're so different. And that's what's amazing about us. So stop
And I think we
and
spend a lot of
wonder.
time conflicting about that rather than,
Yeah.
right. I think we focus a lot on conflict rather than trying to learn. As that's what I'm focusing on, and I'm loving that. Instead of trying to make it an issue, if we make it a learning process, if we make it like, oh, I didn't know that, can you tell me more about that? I think it will change the whole paradigm. It will change the whole conversation and the outcome of the whole situation. And as you're saying, it'll make it a happy workplace. It'll make a happy community overall.
Yeah, I really believe that, and I see that. Luckily, I learn every day from two Gen Zs that I have at home, and a lot of the time I have to say I have no idea what they're saying to me. But
A friend of
here's
mine
what,
posted something recently. Sorry, go on. You go on first. You go on.
you know what I learned what to. I learned not to pretend that I understand. And how often do we do that? It's just to get away with it, to save time, because I don't have time to listen to you. I don't have time to clarify that. And I ask, what does that mean? I don't understand what you're telling me. And that helps. That's one thing that helps, because then I I'm more curious, and then I can focus. And then when I want to understand, I'll make that effort to understand what they're telling and where they're coming from. And then we can have a dialogue. And there's a lot to learn from these kind of dialogues.
Absolutely. And you actually made me, because so here's what I'm gonna try and put it on screen. I'm not very good with this. Let me see if we can show people. This actually happened recently. A friend of mine posted, and that's a perfect example of you can see that. How do I put this here?
Okay.
There we go. So here's the texting of two generations. This is like in a park or something. So this is to text us at so and so number if you see anything that needs our attention. We want to make this campground as relaxing, as comfortable as possible for our guests. Thank you. Now this park has put a new sign next to it, translated for teenagers. Sup, HMU at number. If you see anything that is sus or cringe, like IDK, which is I don't know, a toilet that got wrecked or something, TVH, we high key trying to glow up this campground, can't stop, won't stop until this place straight up stays. Need your help, fam. TY, I mean, I know what they mean, but it just was so funny to me. Like, oh my God, that's so true. That's exactly what what we're going through.
And I mean, but hey, this has happened. Like, this has been happening for ages. Like, think about when you get hired for the first time in a company, especially if it's your first job. And there's all these acronyms that people use for so many things. It's almost like even if you speak the same language, it sounds like a completely foreign language because you don't understand what they mean. And it's the same thing. I mean, these are codes, right? This is code for this and this and that. But it does have an influence on the language, on how even the older generations end up speaking. So that's what I'm saying. We're going to
Well,
be influenced by one another anyway.
absolutely. Absolutely. I want to share an example of me and my mom. So we're talking about when the texting language started. I'm giving away my age, but I'm 21 plus. Okay. So I sent, I sent something to my mom, and I sent LOL, and she just texted back saying, "Shame on you! Don't send that to your mother." I'm like, "What? What did I say?" And I looked back at my text. I'm like, "What did I say? I didn't say anything. It made no sense. I had no idea what." It's like, "How dare you tell me lip on lip?" I'm like, "What? Where did that come from?"
There you go. Make sure everybody understands the same
And,
thing.
and here's the funny part. Here's the funny part. Years later, once she knew what it meant, again, she didn't realize the difference between, and I am sorry if you're watching, mom, but she didn't realize the difference between using it in text and real life. So she started, every time she wanted to laugh, she started saying LOL. And people around her age, they're like, what's wrong with her? What's going on? Why is she saying LOL? What does that mean? So I can see how all that really, plays into that. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and let's talk about you, Roxana, the all personal. When you say it's all personal and you work with millennials, how does that your all personal angle in business helps with that?
Well, especially in the business that I'm in, which is a lot of leadership coaching, team coaching, leadership skills development. That really helps a lot because here's the thing. So, the reason why I say, first of all, I said it's all personal, nothing is just business, just because it's the opposite of nothing personal, just business, which is a phrase that fascinated me all the time. Because it's like every time somebody would personally suffer the second after that phrase was expressed, nothing personal, just business. But also what that means to me is it's all personal because it's all about intrapersonal, so how we manage ourselves, and interpersonal, how we manage our relationships with others. And that's why all personal means intra and interpersonal, as in all of the skills, that the
Right.
skills muscles that we need to be aware of, that we need to train, that we need to keep building, so that we can have successful relationships, successful careers, so that we have that sense of fulfillment. And at the end of the day, so that we're good leaders, kind leaders, both at home and at work. No matter the role hierarchically, we're all leaders one way or another, and we're influencing our immediate environment one way or another. So the more we tap into those powers, the better.
Thank you. And that's, since meeting you, I always had somewhat similar concept, but I didn't have a name for it. I always used to kind of advocate about, work life balance is important, but understand that, if your life is upset, your work is upset. If your work is upset, your life is upset. But I didn't have a name for it. I think I was just waiting for you to come in my life so I can make sense of it. So thank you for doing that. And
I'm
it has
here.
actually helped a lot. Just the concept itself is so helpful. And I want to ask, I saw recently, I think you're running a program or an event or a masterclass or something. If you can tell us a little bit more about that and who can join for it, and who is it beneficial for, and how can they find that information?
So I'm getting ready with two things actually. One about change, and the change superheroes that we can be, and the types of change superheroes, and another one on kind leadership. So, but I'm gonna share those details. They will be definitely on my website, personalskillscoach.com. And they're not ready yet, but these are the two plans that I have for now.
I love them. I love the title. I love the concept you're going with because I think right now the world needs it a lot. So I am looking, I'm going to keep an eye on that. And guys, when you watch this, whether you're watching live or whether you watch replay, you'll find all that information also on our website, intentionalsign.com/Roxana. As soon as Roxana updates on our website, we'll put it on our website as well. So you can go either way and be able to reach to that point. And Roxana, how can people get in touch with you, on social media or otherwise?
I have everything on my website, again, personalskillscoach.com, and I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. If you check Roxana Radulescu on LinkedIn, I'm also on Instagram and on Facebook as well. But you will find all of these details on my website. I'm happy to connect and have some conversations with you further.
Awesome. Now, to wrap up, I have some questions for you, rapid fire kind of questions, if you don't mind answering them. Just a couple. You have answered some of them, or kind of, but let's see what you do differently today. So, what mistake have you made that you do not want others to make? And let's put it in concept of the generation gap.
Mm, that's a great one. I think one mistake that I used to do is to not express my ideas enough, or not express what I wanted enough, and that came with the fact that I was a very shy kid growing up, thinking of myself, I'm too young to even be able to say anything or have anything to say, and why would I have anything to say about that? But I learned that if people don't know what's going on in here, if you don't express that, they cannot contribute, they cannot help, or they cannot, not necessarily help, but they cannot have a conversation with you. You can't have a dialogue, and nothing really happens. You cannot
It's all
produce
in here. It's all in
yes,
here. And
exactly.
we are mentor twins that way. I want to highlight to people as well. We know about this about each other, but I want to tell people as well. We are both trained extroverted introverts. You know, we love spending time by ourselves, but we have trained ourselves. And who would have thought we are always live and doing things and talking to the whole world when we really are people who can just be as happy in a room by ourselves. Okay, next question. If you could collaborate with just anyone, absolutely anyone, alive or dead, anywhere in the world, what would you collaborate about and who would you collaborate with?
The first person that comes to mind is Richard Branson. I'm such a big fan. I think he's been very revolutionary in the way that he's built his businesses, and in the way that he talks about employees as employees come first, which it really was revolutionary, and it's super valuable, especially in today's world. It's such a role model. So I think I would be collaborating with him on so many, because he's everywhere and he does so many different things. So
Well,
anything from charity to volunteering to, that can be
well, you know
a
what?
lot.
It's time that you start getting in touch with him because
I will.
dream big and
Yeah,
make it happen, right?
yes.
Dream big and make it happen.
Sir
Well, here's the
Richard.
question, and I'm going to twist the question a little bit in current context. Um, that's my final question. What would you do if you had $44 billion with you right now, but you could only spend it in 1 hour? $44 billion.
Oh my God, where do I spend it? Like, I can spend it very quickly. There's so many things that you can do with that money. I think for me, there are two things that I care deeply, deeply about. The first one is learning, education. No surprise there. So I would definitely look for charities or organizations or programs that help children all over the world have access to learning, and especially girls, because as we know, in some areas, in some parts of this world, girls are still very much affected by this bias against them, and they don't necessarily have access to education, which affects us all in the end. And then the other one is definitely environment, because I look at Earth. Earth is our home, and I love our home. And if there is anything I can do to keep it clean, to keep it safe, to make it feel like it's loved and cared for, that's what, like, I would definitely look up organizations where I can give this money to to
Well,
to do
thank you.
something about these topics.
I'm so glad that you're not one of those people who would say that I'll buy Twitter.
Um, it's bought already, and look, it's
That's where I was going with
fascinating.
$44 billion.
It's a fascinating story, so I wouldn't want to.
I know. That's another leadership thing. I think it's going to be a case study one day. It's
It's
going to be a
case
case study.
study in real life, so watch it, people, because there's a lot to learn from it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I wish, we could keep going because I love spending time with you. But thank you so much. It
Thank,
was such a pleasure to have you.
thank you for having me, and looking forward to continue the conversation offline. So
Oh,
I'm gonna check
absolutely. We're going to have
those
lots more
comments.
conversations. Absolutely. And guys, thank you so much for staying tuned with us. We will be back next time. Until next, take care and dream big, make it happen. Bye now.